Kiwi team were also remembering the 29 miners killed last week in a mine explosion. 33-18 result was the first loss the Australian team had suffered this season. Negotiations to stop a possible NFL lockout next season have been extended by 24 hours. Players and club owners are in dispute over how to split the estimated $9 billion the league earns every year. The owners want to increase their current 40% share, whilst the players disagree. If they don't find a solution, the players will face the threat of a lockout where the clubs prevent them from playing for next season. It's even prompted US President Barack Obama to comment. He's urged both parties to find a solution.
You've got owners, most of whom are worth close to $1 billion. You've got players who are making millions of dollars. My working assumption at a time when people are having to cut back, compromise, and worry about making the mortgage and paying for their kids' college education is that the two parties should be able to work it out without the President of the United States intervening.
To NBA, with the Denver Nuggets held off the Utah Jazz 103-101 on Thursday. The star of the night was Aaron Aflalo, who shook off an ankle strain to score 19 points for the Nuggets. Ty Lawson added another 20 to seal the win for the visitors, their 5th victory in 6 games. On Friday, the NBA will hold the first regular season game in Europe when the New Jersey Nets take on Toronto Raptors in London. Ashley House reports.
On Friday and Saturday nights here at the O2 Arena in London, basketball history will be made when 2 regular season NBA games will take place in Europe for the very first time. The New Jersey Nets and the Toronto Raptors are both struggling towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference with no real hopes of playoff places. But they've made the journey across the Atlantic as part of the NBA's drive to become a truly international league.
The Nets have played in England before, beating the Miami Heat at the O2 in the 2008 pre-season. That was one of 4 sold-out NBA Europe live games in London over the past few seasons, the start of NBA Commissioner David Stern's dream of a European league within 10 years. The push to Europe has been controversial, but Toronto head coach Jay Triano is a fan of the idea.
There's 82 games throughout the season, and I don't think anybody's going to remember at the end of the year Game 65. But they're going to remember the trip to London, England, and they're going to remember the hospitality that we were shown here and the fact that they got to perform in front of a different set of eyes that they would probably never get to perform in front of live. So I think it's all positive for our players.
Not everyone's so sure, though, and the Nets' deadline deal, 2-time All-Star point guard Darren Williams, can certainly see the difficulties.
We've been talking about having a franchise or a separate league over here, or a division over here. I just don't know how it will work. It would be tough, I think, to play, consistent games over here and for teams to come over and play games over there. But
in the midst of that ongoing discussion, the NBA Global Community Outreach Initiative, NBA Cares, was also on show. Since October 2005, the league, players and teams have raised over $145 million and built more than 525 places where families can live, learn and play around the world. In London, local children were given a basketball clinic by some of the game's biggest stars.
1, 2, 3.
Of course, both teams will certainly be looking for victories in the back-to-back games, but you can't help thinking that this is probably a trip that the players could do without in the middle of an 82-game season. This event, though, is not about the matchup on the court. It's about basketball looking for new markets. And if the sellout crowds in London are anything to go by, they might just be getting somewhere. I'm Ashley House at the O2 Arena in London.
That's a spot from you, Adrian.
Tana, many thanks indeed. And there we draw the news hour to a close. But stay with us on Al Jazeera. I'll be back with the very latest from Libya in just a few moments.
On the next Riz Khan show, a barrier to peace. Former Pink Floyd star Roger Waters adds his voice to the calls for Israel to remove its wall in the West Bank. Riz Khan at this time on Al Jazeera.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story at this time on Al Jazeera.
anti-Gaddafi fighters show no sign of backing down as fresh clashes break out with government forces in Libya. Hello, Adrian Finnegan with you here live in Doha. This is Al Jazeera. Our top stories this hour, as is becoming the norm here in the Arab world. Friday prayers have been accompanied by more protests, including here, as you can see, in Egypt. Further demonstrations in Yemen calling for the president there to step down. And in other news, China has announced a big boost in military spending, making its neighbors nervous. A lot to bring you up to speed with this hour. We'll begin in Libya, where we're getting reports of anti-government protests kicking off in the capital. Tripoli is considered a stronghold of the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Government security forces have reportedly been sent to the Tadjoura district in the city's east to crack down on protesters there. Rebel fighters are continuing to take on Colonel Gaddafi's security forces in towns right across the country. Fresh fightings also erupted in the western towns of AlJazeera and Misrata. For more on the situation in Libya, let's cross live now to Al Jazeera's Hoda Abdelhamid, who's in Benghazi. What can you tell us about what's happening there, Hoda?
Well, I think here in Benghazi, it's become really the city that sends messages of support to the rest of the country. Earlier, we had the Friday prayers and the Friday sermon, and in the sermon, it was clearly said that this uprising was an uprising for the entire country, for the entire of the Libyan people to regain their dignity. I think it was underlined more than once that this was not a tribal matter, or that Al-Qaeda was behind this uprising, but this is really because people were fed up with their lives. They believed that the reform could have been coming. They didn't come, and now they were going for it. But they were also chanting slogans like the Tunisian people, the Egyptian people, and the Libyan people are all the same and are making history at the moment. You could clearly feel in the sermon, though, that the Imam was trying to make sure that the spirits remained high. I think there is a feeling here that somehow we've reached a deadlock, both sides digging their heels in their positions and nothing really coming out, or certainly not as quick as people wanted here. And Libyans would tell you that Gaddafi is a survivor. He is a man that survived sanctions, embargoes, and many other crises, and they're afraid that he might be able to survive.
And Hoda, what are you hearing from the border, the latest on what's rapidly becoming a humanitarian crisis?
Well, certainly humanitarian organizations and other aid organizations are saying that the situation at the border now has reached